They're not telling us everything. Insider claims something else happened before Yibo'S collapse. Walls at Beijing Central Medical Center are cold, clinical, designed to soothe. But in the hours before Wang Yibo'S collapse, those same walls echoed screams, slammed doors, and secrets that nearly cost him his life. Official diagnosis: exhaustion, stress, fainting. The message rolled out across media like clockwork. He'd overworked himself, he'd dehydrated, he was stable now. Truth is, that narrative is incomplete. And one insider claims what really happened that night changed everything. It started at midnight. Wang Yibo had wrapped a 16-hour shoot for Glass Wings, his body visibly shaking in the last frames. Crew members noticed his hands trembling. Makeup artists whispered he had refused to rest because of unresolved tension with Xiao Zhan. By 12:30 a.m., they say, he stopped listening. An hour later, he left the set. Alone. Insiders say cameras continued rolling on an empty set behind them, hidden two silhouettes arguing in silence, Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo, corridor shadows splintered by bright crane lights, neither MI seat, no audience, just fury and heartbreak. The insider, an assistant director who asked to remain unnamed, asserts they saw part of it. Yibo pulled out his phone and showed Zhan something. The words "I'm done" appeared on screen. Then there was shouting. Then, silence. Minutes later, an aide found Wang Yibo slumped against a maintenance cart. He was breathing, but his nails were white-knuckled, clutching a shattered frame, an old photo of the two smiling backstage. He refused help, refused water, and insisted on fresh air. Footage from the set's backup surveillance vanished that same night. Zeros. Errors. Then the cameras were found malfunctioning. DirecTV logs confirm a 20-minute gap from 1:10 a.m. to 1:30 a.m. right before Wang Yibo's collapse. The insider says that someone, possibly from his own production team, ordered the erasure. And this is the first time anyone has admitted that the official tumble from exhaustion might be missing the real trigger. Xiao Zhan's driver was recorded driving them back to the hotel shortly before sunrise. But audio from security recording reveals, it wasn't silent. He was crying. Over and over, talking into his hands. The chauffeur says he heard him whisper, "I told him I couldn't take silence. I told him he'd leave. And then he did." Then Wang Yibo called him Zhongji in that hotel corridor at 2:37 a.m. An hour later found unconscious in bed, breathing shallow, skin cold to the touch. A second insider, a studio publicist, let slip another detail during a late-night phone call. The entire meeting was set up. Zhan was invited. But then Yibo forgot until cameras were removed. That's when the fight began. Public filings show Xiao Zhan was billed $5,000 for extra hours that night, money he never used. The bill later flagged as fraudulent. Some believe he tried to back out. Others think he was desperate for confrontation that never happened. Paramedics recall how Xiao Zhan fought to ride with Wang Yibo. He begged them, literally clawed at their uniforms when they told him no space. One EMT claims, he said, "He's mine, as in he belongs to me. Not in a creepy way, but protective. Like he'd been waiting to keep him alive." Minutes later, Yibo flatlined. Twice. Resuscitated both times, but not before Xiao Zhan was so broken he had to be carried out, arms limp, eyes lifeless. Hospital protocol meant no visitors in ICU. Yet Xiao Zhan was there within 45 minutes, unscheduled, unauthorized, holding Yibo's hand by the bedside. No cameras, no real records, just silence and tears. A nurse confided, he didn't sleep, didn't eat. And he whispered something over and over, "Don't let go. Don't let them take him." When asked what them meant, she shook her head. She had her own worries now. Uncover the truth about Wang Yibo started trending when the CCTV leak rumors hit forums. Fans claim they've registered police complaints about the 20-minute erasure. On Weibo, fans are sharing secret timelines. One claims Yibo and Zhan were involved in a silent argument starting 3 nights before the collapse. Another says Zhan posted a now-deleted message to a friend, "He acts more distant than before. I feared he might push himself too far." Media remains silent. Official statements still call it medical emergency caused by exhaustion. But tension is rising. If there was a fight, something well beyond exhaustion, are management and studio executives covering it up? Are romance, betrayal, and emotional breakdowns fueling the collapse? One respected journalist whispered, "This isn't just a collapsed idol story anymore. It's about agency. What they control, what they hide, how much pain is ignored." The same journalist also says there's a hidden clause in Yibo'S contract that demands silence in these scenarios. A clause that might have made erasing footage easier and attracting conspiracy harder to stop. What if exhaustion was just the headline? What if heartbreak, secrecy, and pressure, the buried nighttime confrontation, were the actual trigger? Because sometimes what they don't tell you matters more than what they do. It wasn't just a fight. And it wasn't just about a broken promise. What happened between Xiaozhan and Wang Yibo in that dimly lit corridor was the final eruption of something that had been simmering for months, a silence too loud, a love too hidden, and a truth too dangerous. A third studio staffer, a sound technician named Hao, finally spoke out anonymously after watching the news twist the narrative. He didn't fall from exhaustion, Hao said. He fell from impact, emotional impact. You can literally see his body collapse when Jean turns his back. "I was there. I saw it." The technician had just unplugged the MIC system and was packing up when he noticed them not fighting like enemies, but trembling like lovers on the edge of disaster. Their words weren't recorded, but Hao recalled Jean's eyes were red, and Yibo'S voice cracked. He said something like "so it was never real," and Jean, he didn't answer. He just wiped his face and walked. That walk, that single step away, was the breaking point. Wang Yibo didn't just fall to the floor, he dropped his entire emotional weight, knees buckling as if the hope holding him up had shattered inside him. Hao ran to help, but Yibo refused. He curled inward, fists clenched around the hem of his sleeve, his breath shallow. Minutes later, Xiaozhan returned. And the world nearly stopped. The hallway lights flickered overhead. The silence was unbearable. Jean looked down at him, eyes wide with shock. No words, just trembling hands, reaching, not knowing if he was too late. He dropped to his knees beside Yibo, shaking him, whispering, "Please don't do this. Not now. Not like this." And that's when it started, the seizure. The scream that followed didn't come from Wang Yibo. It came from Jean. A scream so raw, so torn apart, that even the janitor on the ground floor came running. His voice cracked. "He's not breathing," he cried, pounding on the walls, calling for help, slapping Yibo'S cheeks, begging him to open his eyes. By the time the ambulance arrived, the only thing louder than the sirens was the sound of Xiaozhan's hands slamming the vehicle door, insisting he'd ride along. They refused at first. He wouldn't let go. He was screaming so loud, medics had to pull him back. "I'm not press. I'm not crew. I'm the reason he's like this. Let me in." They let him. Inside that ambulance, the monitors beeped erratic, stuttering, just like Yibo'S breathing. And then it flatlined. For 11 full seconds. Jean pressed his forehead to Yibo'S chest, sobbing, whispering, "You don't get to leave like this. You don't." Paramedics shocked him once. No response. A second time, a faint flicker returned. When they arrived at the ER, Yibo'S hand moved. Just slightly. Not enough to mean anything to the doctors. But Jean noticed. He clutched it like a lifeline. The first words he heard from the attending doctor made his legs nearly give out. "He may not wake up tonight." Jean waited anyway. Nurses recall how he sat in the hallway, soaked in sweat, still in costume, trembling. Someone offered him a blanket. He didn't take it. He didn't speak. Until a nurse came out to say Yibo had been stabilized. He got up. Walked in. And for 5 minutes, the room was so quiet you could hear only the machines. Then Jean whispered, "I didn't mean to leave. I didn't mean it when I walked away." He placed Yibo'S hand over his heart and said, "You were never supposed to carry this alone." The media never saw that. What they saw was the next morning's press conference where executives claimed exhaustion, denied rumors, and reassured fans. They didn't see Jean's tear-streaked eyes watching from behind the tinted hospital glass. They didn't see the way he pressed his fingers to the glass when Yibo'S eyelids fluttered. Because hours later, against all expectations, Wang Yibo opened his eyes. Not fully. Not clearly. But enough to whisper one word, "GE." Xiao Zhan collapsed into tears. But even as hope returned, fear never left. Hospital staff were instructed not to allow any footage from that night to leak. Confidentiality forms were handed out. Security cameras were wiped. The timeline restructured. The official version stitched together cleanly, no confrontation, no emotional collapse, no flatline, just a simple case of stress. But insiders know better. And fans are now putting the pieces together. On social media, theories are growing louder. One post showed John's reflection in the hospital's glass, a faint silhouette beside Yibo'S bed. Another user reposted an old interview where Yibo mentioned his fear of being abandoned when it matters most. And then came the leak, a 4-second audio clip, possibly recorded from a crew member's phone. In it, you can hear a voice, shaky and broken, whispering, "I watched him stop breathing, because I let go." Fans say it's John's voice. Studio representatives deny its authenticity. But in this storm of silence, whispers are more powerful than statements. Because if the world really knew what happened that night, not just the medical emergency, but the heartbreak, the betrayal, the desperation, it would change everything. And maybe that's why they're keeping it quiet. But now, the silence is cracking. And with every heartbeat Wang Yibo regains, the truth gets harder to bury.